Let me tell you something they don't prepare you for. The moment you choose peace, real peace, not comfort, not approval, not applause, life gets quiet. Phones stop ringing. Invitations slow down. People you once ran with can't recognize the new frequency you're on. And right there, most people panic. They think something's wrong. But that's silence. That's not loss. That's alignment. If you stay with me till the end of this message, you'll understand why the loneliest season of your life might be the most expensive upgrade your soul ever receives. Peace feels lonely at first because peace doesn't argue. It doesn't compete. It doesn't beg to be understood. Peace just stands still while chaos exposes itself. When you step away from drama, from proving yourself, from explaining your vision to people who never invested in it, you start hearing your own thoughts again. And that's scary for people who've been running from themselves their whole lives. But clarity is born in quiet. And destiny only speaks when the room is silent. There's a difference between being alone and being isolated. Isolation is fear-driven. Solitude is purpose-driven. When you choose peace, you're not rejecting people, you're selecting standards. You're saying, I value my future more than temporary company. That decision will cost you. You'll lose familiar faces. You'll outgrow conversations that go nowhere. But what you gain is rare focus, direction, and self-respect. And those things compound like interest. Most people never reach their assignment because they can't survive the lonely chapters. They quit when the crowd leaves. They go back to noise because silence exposes their responsibility. Peace forces you to face your habits, your discipline, your excuses. It makes you accountable. That's why it feels heavy at first. But once you adjust, you realize peace isn't empty. It's full of answers. Here's the truth nobody claps for. Everyone wants success, but very few want the separation that comes before it. Peace is a filter. It removes distractions disguised as friends. It removes urgency that isn't aligned. It teaches you patience when results are delayed. And slowly, without announcing itself, peace builds authority. People start listening differently because you move differently. One day, the same peace that made you feel lonely will make you feel untouchable, not arrogant, grounded. You won't chase validation because you already validated your path. You won't fear losing people because you found yourself. And when the world finally catches up to the frequency you've been on, they'll call it wisdom, leadership, even greatness. But you'll know the truth. It all started when you chose peace over noise, solitude over chaos, and purpose over popularity. Peace begins where noise ends. And most people are addicted to noise. Not because noise is productive, but because noise is comfortable. Noise gives people an excuse to avoid themselves. Endless conversations, constant opinions, social validation, drama, reactions, notifications. All of it keeps the mind busy enough to never sit still and ask the hard questions. The moment the noise stops, reality shows up. That's why peace feels unfamiliar to most people. Silence doesn't entertain you, it confronts you. And confrontation with self is something the average person spends their whole life running from. When you choose peace, you're not just lowering volume around you, you're raising awareness within you. You start noticing patterns you ignored before. You see which habits were distractions and which relationships were just emotional background music. Peace pulls the curtain back. It shows you where you've been wasting time, energy, and potential. That realization can be uncomfortable, even painful. That's why many people rush back to noise. They'd rather stay busy than be honest. Noise makes you feel included. Peace makes you feel responsible, and responsibility scares people. Because once the noise is gone, you can't blame anyone else. You can't hide behind excuses. You hear your own inner voice clearly. And that voice doesn't lie. It tells you what needs to change, what needs to end, and what you've been avoiding. Peace demands growth, and growth requires discipline, not comfort. Most people confuse peace with boredom because they've been overstimulated for too long. Their minds are trained on chaos. So when peace arrives, they think something is missing. In reality, what's missing is unnecessary conflict. What's missing is comparison. What's missing is the pressure to perform for people who don't matter in the long run. Peace strips life down to what's essential. And minimal environments expose maximum truth. Noise keeps you reactive. Peace makes you strategic. When you're constantly surrounded by opinions, expectations, and urgency, you make decisions emotionally. But when things get quiet, you begin to move intentionally. You start choosing long-term vision over short-term relief. You stop responding to everything and start responding to what aligns. That shift alone separates leaders from followers. Here's the part people don't talk about. Noise feels alive, but it's draining. Peace feels empty at first, but it's restoring. At the beginning, silence feels heavy because you're detoxing from chaos. Just like any withdrawal, there's discomfort before clarity. But if you stay long enough, peace sharpens your thinking, strengthens your intuition, and stabilizes your emotions. You stop being controlled by external triggers. Peace doesn't mean life gets easier. It means life gets clearer. And clarity is power. When noise ends, excuses end. When excuses end, purpose begins. That's why peace is rare. Not because it's unavailable, but because it requires courage to sit alone with your truth. And only those willing to face that truth ever move forward with real authority. Loneliness is not punishment. It is the training ground for purpose. Most people misunderstand loneliness because they associate it with rejection, failure, or being unwanted. But real loneliness doesn't come from being abandoned by others. It comes from being selected for growth. It's the season where life pulls you away from distractions so you can develop strength without applause. And that's uncomfortable because humans are wired to seek approval. But purpose is never revealed in crowds. It's forged in isolation. When loneliness first hits, it feels like something has been taken from you. Friends fade, conversations dry up, and the energy around you changes. You start questioning yourself. You wonder if you did something wrong. But what's actually happening is refinement. Life is reducing the noise so you can hear direction. Purpose needs space. It needs silence. It needs time alone to mature. And most people fail here because they try to escape the process instead of learning from it. Loneliness forces you to build an inner foundation. When no one is clapping, you find out if you truly believe in your vision. When no one is calling, you discover whether your discipline is real or borrowed from motivation. This is where character is developed. You stop performing and start becoming. You stop chasing attention and start chasing mastery. Loneliness doesn't weaken you. It exposes what needs strengthening. The dangerous thing about always having company is that you can borrow confidence from others. But borrowed confidence collapses the moment you're alone. Loneliness takes that option away. It teaches you self-reliance. It pushes you to sit with your thoughts, confront your fears, and sharpen your focus. That's why so many people rush back to relationships, crowds, and distractions. Not because they love connection, but because they fear self-examination. Purpose requires endurance, and endurance is trained in lonely moments. No one sees the early mornings, the late nights, the doubts you fight silently. But those unseen hours are where real power is built. Loneliness teaches patience. It teaches restraint. It teaches you how to move without validation. And once you master that, you become dangerous, not to others, but to limitations. Here's the truth. Loneliness filters intentions. People who are only with you for convenience disappear. People who were never meant to go where you're going naturally fall away. And that hurts, but it's necessary. Purpose demands alignment. You can't carry everyone into the next chapter. Loneliness makes that clear without explanation. Over time, loneliness stops feeling empty and starts feeling focused. You realize you're not missing people. You're meeting yourself. You're learning your rhythm, your values, your boundaries. And once purpose is clear, loneliness transforms into solitude. Solitude becomes strength. Strength becomes leadership. One day, people will admire your discipline, your clarity, your calm. They'll call it confidence, wisdom, or maturity. But they won't see the lonely seasons that shaped you. They won't know that your purpose was trained in silence. And that's fine. Because loneliness was never meant to be understood by crowds. It was meant to prepare you to lead them. Walking alone is often the price of thinking differently. The moment you stop following the script handed to you by society, you automatically step off the crowded road. Different thinking creates distance, not because you're better than others, but because you're no longer moving at the same speed or in the same direction. Most people are comfortable repeating what they've been told, living on borrowed beliefs and measuring success by familiar standards. The one who thinks differently questions those standards, and questioning separates you. At first, walking alone feels like rejection. You notice the gap widening between you and people you once related to. The jokes don't land the same. The conversations feel shallow. The goals no longer align. And it's tempting to shrink your vision just to fit back in. But every breakthrough in history came from someone who refused to do that. Different thinking demands courage, because approval is easier than authenticity. But approval never builds legacies. When you think differently, you stop chasing quick wins and start building long foundations. You're willing to delay gratification while others seek immediate comfort. You invest in skills when others invest in appearances. That choice makes your journey lonely, because results don't show up overnight. People only understand success once it's visible. But different thinkers commit long before there's evidence. That's why they walk alone for so long. Walking alone also teaches you to trust your inner compass. When there's no crowd to validate your direction, you learn how to listen to intuition, logic, and discipline instead of opinions. This is where mental strength is developed. You learn to make decisions without consensus. You learn to stand firm without applause. And that ability becomes priceless later when pressure increases and leadership is required. Most people fear walking alone because it exposes responsibility. If you fail, there's no one to blame. If you succeed, there's no one to credit. That level of ownership is heavy, but it's also empowering. When you fully own your path, you move with a different level of confidence. Not loud confidence, but grounded confidence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Walking alone sharpens discernment. You become selective with your time, your energy, your access. You realize not everyone deserves proximity to your vision. And that's not arrogance, that's protection. Different thinking attracts misunderstanding before it attracts respect. People label what they don't understand. They mock what threatens their comfort. But if you stay consistent, those same voices eventually fall silent. Here's the paradox. The longer you walk alone, the more prepared you become to walk with others later. Solitude teaches leadership before leadership has a title. It teaches you how to carry weight without support. It builds emotional control, patience, and resilience. These qualities can't be downloaded or taught in crowds. They're earned in quiet miles. One day, people will ask how you stayed focused when no one believed. They'll wonder how you trusted a vision others couldn't see. The answer will be simple. You paid the price early. You walked alone when it was uncomfortable, uncertain, and unseen. And that lonely road shaped a thinker strong enough to change direction for many, because he was brave enough to think differently when it cost him company. Peace costs relationships, but it pays in clarity and power. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, because humans are emotional by nature. We attach meaning to people, routines, and shared history. So when peace demands distance, it feels like betrayal or loss. But not every relationship is meant to survive every version of you. Some connections are only compatible with the old you, the distracted you, the available you at all times version. When you choose peace, you stop feeding chaos. And the people who thrived on that chaos naturally fade away. Clarity doesn't come from conversations. It comes from separation. When you step back, you finally see things as they are, not as you hope they would be. You see who respects your boundaries and who resents them. You see who supports your growth and who benefits from your confusion. That clarity can be painful because it removes illusions. But illusions are expensive. They cost time, energy, and self-respect. Peace strips them away so you can move forward clean. Many relationships survive only because of constant access, constant talking, constant explaining, constant emotional labor. Peace interrupts that cycle. It says no more overextending, no more justifying, no more carrying what isn't yours. And when that happens, some people feel abandoned, not because you left them, but because you stopped sacrificing yourself. That's the cost. And most people aren't ready to pay it. But what peace gives you in return is power, not loud power, not dominance, internal power. The power to think clearly without emotional interference. The power to make decisions without guilt. The power to say no without fear. When your mind isn't cluttered with other people's expectations, your focus becomes sharp. You stop reacting and start choosing. That's where real authority begins. Peace, Alice. O teaches you that proximity is not the same as alignment. Someone can be close to you and still be misaligned with your future. Distance doesn't always mean dislike. Sometimes it means direction. Peace creates space between you and anything that pulls you away from your purpose. That space feels empty at first, but it's actually room for growth. The relationships that survive peace are different. They're quieter, healthier. They don't require constant reassurance. They respect silence. They support evolution. These connections are rare, but they're real, and they're worth the loss of dozens of shallow bonds. Peace trades quantity for quality, and that trade-off builds strength. Power grows when your emotions stop being controlled by external behavior. When you're no longer triggered by every comment, absence, or misunderstanding, you become unshakable. Peace doesn't make you cold, it makes you stable. It gives you the emotional range to respond instead of react. That stability is what people trust in leaders, even if they don't know why. In the end, peace may reduce your circle, but it expands your capacity. It sharpens your vision. It anchors your confidence. And the power it builds within you outlasts any relationship that required you to be restless to belong. Discipline protects peace when motivation disappears. Motivation is emotional, and emotions rise and fall with circumstances. One good conversation, one bad day, one distraction, and motivation can vanish. The T's, why peace cannot be built on feelings alone. Peace needs structure. Discipline is the system that guards your mind when your emotions are unstable. It's what keeps you aligned when excitement fades and when no one is watching. Most people think discipline is punishment, but discipline is actually protection. It protects your time from being wasted. It protects your energy from being drained. It protects your focus from being hijacked by things that don't matter long term. When motivation is high, discipline feels unnecessary. But when motivation disappears, and it always does, discipline is the only thing standing between peace and chaos. Without discipline, peace becomes fragile. One late night turns into a bad week. One broken routine turns into mental clutter. One emotional decision opens the door to old habits. Discipline closes that door. It creates boundaries that don't depend on how you feel. You wake up when you said you would. You work when you don't feel inspired. You rest intentionally instead of escaping into distractions. That consistency stabilizes your inner world. Discipline also reduces decision fatigue. When your routines are set, your mind has fewer choices to argue over. You're not constantly negotiating with yourself. You already decided. That simplicity creates calm. Chaos thrives on indecision. Peace thrives on commitment. Discipline turns daily actions into automatic behaviors, freeing mental space for creativity and vision instead of constant self-control battles. When motivation disappears, most people start seeking stimulation, noise, drama, validation. Discipline does the opposite. It brings you back to center. It reminds you of your long-term direction when short-term feelings try to pull you off course. That's why disciplined people appear calm under pressure. The peace isn't accidental, it's rehearsed daily. Discipline also builds self-trust. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen confidence. Every time you follow through without motivation, you prove reliability. And self-trust is the foundation of peace. Anxiety often comes from knowing you can't rely on yourself. Discipline fixes that. It turns intention into action and action into identity. People think freedom comes from doing whatever they want. In reality, freedom comes from being able to control yourself. Discipline gives you that control. It allows you to say no to impulses that would steal your peace later. It teaches you to delay gratification without resentment. That ability separates people who maintain peace from those who constantly lose it. Over time, discipline becomes quiet strength. You don't talk about it. You live it. Your peace deepens because your life becomes predictable in the best way. Not boring, but stable. And when storms come, when motivation is gone, when pressure increases, your peace doesn't collapse. It stands firm, guarded by discipline you built long before you needed it. Those who master peace event usually lead crowds they once walked away from. This is the quiet irony of growth. At the beginning, choosing peace separates you from people. You step back, you go silent, you stop explaining, and it looks like disappearance. From the outside, it seems like you fell off. But internally, something powerful is forming. While others stay busy performing, you're building stability, and stability always attracts attention later. Leadership doesn't begin with influence, it begins with self-control. When you master peace, you master your reactions, your emotions, and your impulses. You stop being controlled by praise or provocation. That internal mastery creates a presence people can feel even if they can't explain it. Calm becomes credibility. People trust those who are not easily shaken. That's why over time, eyes start turning toward the ones who stayed grounded while others stayed loud. When you walked away from the crowd, you weren't rejecting people, you were rejecting confusion. You refused to move at a pace that wasn't aligned with your purpose. That decision cost you visibility in the short term, but it built depth. And depth is what sustains leadership when pressure comes. Anyone can gather attention for a moment, but only those with inner peace can carry responsibility without collapsing. Crowds follow clarity. They follow consistency. They follow those who don't need to react to every trend or opinion. When people see you moving calmly while they're overwhelmed, they start asking questions. How are you so focused? How are you so steady? How are you not stressed by what stresses everyone else? The answer is never luck. It's peace practiced daily in private. The same people who misunderstood your silence will eventually respect your restraint. The same ones who questioned your distance will later seek your direction. Not because you tried to lead them, but because you became someone worth following. Peace sharpens your message. It removes desperation from your voice. When you speak, there's weight behind your words because you're not speaking from insecurity. Leadership born from peace is different. It doesn't force, it attracts. It doesn't chase approval, it sets standards. It doesn't need to dominate the room because the room adjusts to it. That kind of leadership is rare, and that's why it stands out. People are tired of chaos. They're drawn to calm like shelter in a storm. Walking away was never about isolation. It was preparation. Peace trained you to carry responsibility without losing yourself. It taught you how to stand alone before standing in front. That process filters ego out of leadership and replaces it with service and vision. One day, you'll look back and realize the distance you created was necessary. The quiet seasons, the misunderstood choices, the lonely discipline, they were shaping your capacity. And when the crowd gathers, you won't need to impress them. You'll simply lead. Not because you chased influence, but because you mastered peace when no one was watching. In the end, peace is not an escape from life. It is the foundation for mastering it. What felt lonely was never abandonment, it was preparation. What felt like silence was never emptiness, it was direction forming. Every step away from noise, every relationship that fell off, every moment you stood alone was shaping the strength you now carry. Peace trained you to listen. Discipline taught you to stay. And solitude forced you to become honest with yourself. The world rewards loudness, but it follows clarity. It chases trends, but it trusts consistency. And the people who truly change things are not the most visible at the beginning. They are the most grounded. Peace gave you that grounding. It made you unshakable when chaos tried to pull you back. It taught you that real power doesn't rush, doesn't beg, and doesn't explain itself. So if you're in that quiet season right now, don't retreat. Don't fill the silence with distractions just to feel included. Stay there, build there, grow there. Because the same peace that feels lonely today is building authority for tomorrow. And when the time comes, you won't need to chase the sea. The crowd will recognize the calm you carry and follow it.